Fueled by social protests brought on by centuries of colonial occupation, Mexican art in the 20th century often focused on the formation of a new national identity. From panoramic murals to modest still lifes, Mexico's people and culture were at the ideological center of art production. Origins and influences. Mexican art is a rich blend of diverse sources that reflect the complex historic and social forces underlying the formation of its national identity. European influences, dominant from colonial times onwards, became a point of contention at the beginning of the 20th century as the Mexican Revolution challenged its citizens to form their own vision of themselves as a nation. Looking at their pre-Columbian past and indigenous populations with a fresh eye, free of European value judgments, Mexican artists began to enthusiastically incorporate the nature, people, and culture around them, instead of emulating foreign trends. Subject: art that focused on Mexicanidad, all things Mexican, became an important part of the search for national identity. American Indian holidays, costume, and folk art became a source of inspiration. These scenes were often mixed with references to ancient gods and religious practices. The distinctive Mexican landscape also featured. In a gesture of cathartic political purging, artists also portrayed the cruelties and injustices of the Spanish conquest. Style: although no one style was ever promoted or followed, Mexican art retains a distinctive look that is due in part to its diverse sources. For example, a unique color palette often reflects indigenous aesthetics, the abstracted form is reminiscent of archaic monumental sculpture, and the satiric commentary comes from popular graphics. Mexican muralism. David Siqueiros painted this mural on the Poliforum Cultural Siqueiros in Mexico City, built 1964-71. Mexican art timeline. The popular graphic artist José Guadalupe Posada lovingly critiqued the passions and foibles of Mexicans of all classes cheap and widely distributed broadsheets. The muralists José Orozco, Diego Rivera, and David Siqueiros created murals on government buildings that were meant to educate Mexicans on their history, from the grandeur of past civilizations to the heroic battles of the Revolution. 1913, Posada, La Catrina. 1938, Calo, What the Water Gave Me. 1942, Tamayo, The Dancers. 1945, Rivera, Great City of Tenochtitlan, Detail. Muralism. Orozco, Rivera, and Siqueiros were the most important muralists and came to be known as Los Tres Grandes, the Three Great Ones. Each had his own distinct style, technique, subject matter, artistic influences, and even political beliefs. Studying in Europe for over 13 years, Rivera was highly influenced by both Cubism and Italian Renaissance murals. Orozco shunned Rivera's didactic Marxism and had a vision of humanity that was darker and more complex. His messages tend to have more universal appeal. An ardent revolutionary who fought in the Spanish Civil War and in other revolutionary battles, Siqueiros was the most experimental in terms of composition and technique, and has had the most lasting influence on future generations of artists. Other talented and visionary artists also painted murals in Mexico, but not exclusively. The far-reaching influence of Mexican muralism on artwork created all over the world cannot be underestimated. Throughout Latin America, Mexican art led the way to developing mature and unique political expressions. The Mexican muralists Xochimilco executed some of their best work in the U.S., and their innovative painting techniques helped to pave the way for abstract expressionism. See page 502. Muralists' other visions. Mexican artists have also followed more individual paths of self-expression. The wife of Rivera, Frida Kahlo, was a tireless promoter of Mexicanidad. With her husband, she amassed important collections of pre-Columbian antiquities and folk art, which they later donated to the people of Mexico. She painted intimate portraits of herself and loved ones, which explored themes of illness, love, and psychological suffering. Her work displays aspects of surrealism, a movement she was peripherally involved in. Rufino Tamayo was a subtle and lyrical colorist, whose work explores his American Indian origins. Like Kahlo, he was also influenced by surrealism. Part of the generation that began to pull away from the political themes of the muralists, Tamayo used myth and abstraction to convey a more universal search for meaning. The Flowered Canoe. Diego Rivera, 1931. In a utopian mingling of the classes, urban mestizo, European Amerindian, tourists float down rural canals on boats at Xochimilco. Currientevents, 1910. The decade long begins. Oil is discovered. Mexican Revolution on the Gulf Coast. 1917. A radical new constitution is formed. 1920-24. Alvaro Obregón is made president, ushering in calm. A program of social reforms begins. 1926. Church strike due to anti-clerical policies. 1929. The National Revolutionary Party is founded. It retains power for 71 years and leads to Mexico becoming a one-party democracy. 1938. The holdings of foreign oil companies are nationalized, a major economic turning point. Diego Rivera. B. Guanajuato City, 1886. D. Mexico City, 1957. Diego Rivera was one of the greatest 20th-century Mexican artists, and his public persona matched his legendary large physical size. He was classically trained, but absorbed modernism during a 13-year stay in Europe. Rivera returned to Mexico after the revolution to work on mural programs run by the Minister of Education, José Vasconcelos, in Mexico City. From this point until his death, he would be a central and controversial figure in Mexican painting and culture. Along with his wife, the artist Frida Kahlo, Rivera promoted a form of cultural nationalism known as Mexicanidad in his murals, paintings, and lifestyle. His collection of Mesoamerican art, along with Anahuacalli, his pre-Columbian-inspired studio, was donated to Mexico when he died. During his stay in the U.S., 1930-33, Rivera painted significant murals and influenced a generation of American artists. However, in 1933 his mural Man at the Crossroads provoked international scandal when it was destroyed at the Rockefeller Center, New York City, due to its depiction of Lenin. Lifeline. 1907-21. Studies in Spain, settles in Paris. 1922 begins to participate in Mexico's mural program. 1929 marries Frida Kahlo. 1930-33 paints murals in San Francisco, Detroit, and New York. 1937 Leon Trotsky deported from Soviet Union. He and his wife arrive in Mexico and live with the Riveras. 1954 Death of Frida Kahlo. The Tortilla Maker. This depiction of monumental Indian women, kneeling in front of stone metates, corn grinders, that have remained unchanged since pre-Hispanic times, suggests the antiquity and enduring nature of Mexican indigenous culture. 1925 Oil on Canvas, 122 by 97 centimeters, University of California, San Francisco, U.S. The great city of Tenochtitlan. Rivera's panoramic murals of pre-Columbian civilizations are committed to authentic detail, but given idealized view of ancient Mexican life. 1945 Fresco, 4.9 x 9.7 m, Palacio Nacional, Mexico City, Mexico. Closer look. Causeways. The Aztec capital was built on an island in Lake Texcoco. Causeways led from the ceremonial center to other cities along the shore, each with its own pyramid-shaped religious structures. José Clemente Orozco. B. Ciudad Guzmán, Jalisco, 1883, D. Mexico City, 1949. One of the great ones of Mexican muralism, Orozco was also an expressive painter, draftsman, and printmaker. Critical of the Mexican Revolution and scornful of propaganda in art, Orozco's examination of history was a complex attempt to get at the truth. His work addressed universal social concerns, such as the role that technology played in war and the subjugation of peoples. One of his favorite themes was the Greek myth of Prometheus, who he recast as the man of fire. This figure served as a metaphor for the artist's role in society, as the self-sacrificing harbinger of change, hope, and salvation. Early in his career, poverty forced Orozco to work in the U.S. for a number of years, where he executed important mural commissions. When he returned to Mexico, with a more firmly established reputation, he painted numerous murals in Guadalajara and Mexico City. American Civilization, Ancient Human Sacrifice. Orozco's mural at Dartmouth is one of the most spectacular examples of Mexican art in the U.S. Epic in scope, the fresco's cycle portrays the dualities of the Indian and European historical experience in North America. 1932, fresco, 305 by 302 centimeters. Dartmouth College, New Hampshire, U.S. The Spanish conquest of Mexico situated in a deconsecrated church, this mural is widely considered Orozco's greatest work. Seeking to create a balanced view of history, Orozco depicts both the negative and positive aspects of the Spanish conquest. 1938-39, fresco, Hospicio Cabanas, Guadalajara, Mexico.